Hi, Andrew.
Hello. We're about to get some more
Hello.
pitches. We're
Hi,
going to have
Andrew.
a old round table.
Super. We haven't started yet. We were just about to, start.
Oh,
So
well,
that's
this is perfect. You can see the numbers are
yes.
popping up. We're bringing people on. We just had a great session over there. I'm sorry we ran a little bit late. We had some technical issues and had to make things work. But I'm sure people will slowly drift and run over. So some people have gone to networking. Some folks, want to hear some more advice. But the big reason why I do this is to kind of unpack a little bit of what we heard. And I didn't get to hear your room, so that we might even hear, new things. But I love to just unpack a little bit. So the first question that I ask, just to start this off, is: did you see some common mistakes or some common themes where you think sharing some specific advice would help people? Were there any common themes that you saw on the pitches tonight?
Many slides very often, far too much information on each slide. Not always, there were a few exceptions that made the rule. The majority had far too much information on there that was unreadable. And because too much information, the print was small and you can only read about less than a quarter of the screen, and I'm just working on a laptop screen.
Yep.
So I missed so much information.
I think that's so key, and it's some of the other discussions I've had in different panels, actually. When you're pitching virtually, it's not the same as being in a boardroom with investors where they have a big screen TV. We have small screens fairly. I mean, we're on a virtual platform with text to the right. It's almost like watching a video on TikTok. Like, you got all the crap on the right, got all the stuff on the left and stuff on the bottom. Like, you've got all these things around your screen, and you need to pitch to the right audience. So if your audience is a hop-in event, this audience right now, I do think it's so important to not have much text, to really make it extra readable, to be very targeted with your graphics, with your text, knowing what platform you're pitching on, because it's different than if you were on a Zoom call, and it's different than if you were on a boardroom. But any response to that?
To build on Colin's point, if you guys can hear me, is just finding the very relatable anchor that everybody can get behind as early as you can in the deck, so everyone fully grasps the business. They fully grasp like why them, why now, and then they can get into the differentiation, the economics, and people are already bought in, and the momentum's going strong from the beginning.
Yeah, kind of a similar point to what George is saying. A lot of the pitches today were really good, but the pitch decks that they sent out in advance were not as good as they are in person. And for me, the problem is always in the storytelling, right? When you talk to someone in person, when you hear their pitch, they introduce themselves, they say, why am I excited? This is what we did. And it's very engaging. And then you put it on paper and you say, we have 110 customers, they pay X amount. And that's just not interesting, right? Like, okay, that's cool, but I don't have an emotional reaction, and it's not engaging. So I think for not just for the pitches today, I see this a lot in my day job. I see this a lot in I'm in an MIT social entrepreneurship alumni group, and a lot of the pitches there have the same issue, where my advice typically is record you doing the pitch, then see how you talk about it, and then see if you can put that in writing, especially if you're thinking about sending your pitch deck out in advance without you being there and talking about it. Like getting their story in writing is very difficult, but worth the effort, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think we had some pitches that were like really well rehearsed and that were totally perfect, and then we had some others which were just completely kind of on the fly and felt like they even, they missed some important details. I think that, and I noticed the same about the kind of PDF decks as well. I think they should, maybe the practical point is to ask people to road test them more frequently. to road test it more in front of more people. The Dazzle and Fizz one, for example, I was totally bemused when I first read the pitch. I was like, what is this Dazzle and Fizz thing? Like, which one is the business?
Yeah, me too.
What is that? And like, when she explained it, it made sense. But I was really confused when I first read it.
Interesting.
Had that been tested on a few people first,
Does that mean that the deck needs to be fixed? Like,
I think in that case, yes. I think in that case,
I think her in-person pitch is so good and her story is so strong, and it doesn't come through in the writing.
So
yeah, I already contacted with her. I'm going to.
No, that's good. I think that's great feedback, especially because she's really cool. So I'm sure she'd love to hear that. That if someone got that in their email, they'd be like, "What is this? I don't understand." But if she was in front of them, that you're excited about it, that's a big difference. So
and for founders, a lot of funds make decisions off just that deck and don't take a first meeting, and that's super important. You've lost an opportunity to speak to a potential investor.
So is there some
and I
insight
had the exact same reaction as Jennifer. What is Dazzle and Fizz?
Is there some insight Jennifer could give on it?
Same thing.
What was it about it that wasn't working in the email? Why wasn't it working? Was it not telling a story? Is that the issue?
Yeah, I think it's what I was trying to say. So when she was talking about it, the story was very clear. It's like, oh, this is what we did. This is Dazzle and Fizz are these in-person events that we're holding. Now we're doing it online. We're selling it to companies because I'm not going to go through the whole pitch, but that was very clear. And I think if she just takes that recording and puts those steps on paper, it's going to be.
She will have the recording.
I hope equally compelling. Yeah.
That's great advice, and I think I've heard that before.
One thing
go ahead.
That I normally do.
The thing about recording.
Wait, so Colin, Garrison was already saying something.
No, go ahead, Colin.
Sure.
We're missing.
No, I was going to say one thing that I tell people about this, that Vera was talking about is actually instead of writing a pitch deck, you write a teaser. It's like a teaser because the objective of sending some deck over email is to get someone's. It's like your resume, right? You want the interview, So if you pump a 20-page slides, I normally don't have time to read it. But if it's a 1 or 2 slides and it's very compelling and that actually attracts the attention, then you actually attract asking for you set up a meeting or you set up a video conference or whatever. Then you have the second step. I think what I normally advise people is that do not write a pitch deck and send over email. You write a teaser, 1 or 2 slide teaser. And it's a completely different way of writing because it's like you draw the attention on why me, why now is exactly what George was talking about, right? Don't go too much on the numbers, or if you go to the number, don't try to hide numbers because sometimes one thing that I saw was high valuation and it's not written anywhere, so you have to dig on the deck where's the valuation, and then the guy tells you that's it's a 10 million pounds company, right? So, and they don't even have a product. So things like that, you try to put this in a completely different way if you just do a teaser.
Thank you. Colin, sorry to cut you off.
I didn't realize. The other advantage with recording a pitch is that not only will you then make sure the story is correct, that you've got visually as well as verbally, but you're also ensuring you're delivering it in the time. Because a lot of people don't speak out loud what they're going to say. They say it in their head. And when you say it in your head, it takes half the time than it does or less than actually speaking it out loud.
And if you want to go really advanced, then you could use one of the latest platforms like Loom, where you basically pitch over your pitch deck, send it, then you've skipped the whole first meeting, and that person can see you pitch, see your style, understand the full story. You can get it in 4 to 5 minutes. Boom, you're into the meat in the first meeting.
I love Loom. I not enough
I
people
love it
use
when founders
Loom.
do it. Yeah,
it's free. It works great. I think the people who are embracing the new technologies are using it. I just think it's awesome.
And then when you do that as well, you can do more of the show me, don't tell me. You can go into your product, you can show me what's going on within the product, and then we get a strong understanding of what's going on in addition to any deck materials.
Mm. These are great. Anything else that stood out? So some decks, some deck issues, some length or storytelling issues. That's great advice to be practicing, out loud, recording yourself, watching yourself, and I think getting feedback from other people was kind of implied in the advice that you all were giving. Anything else that stood out? I noticed there were a few comments. There were a few comments about valuation from both sides. From you're bringing in blank million already. Why are you raising 400,000 pounds when you're bringing in a few million? That doesn't make any sense. And I saw the opposite. Why are you valued so high? I'm curious if there's any insights we could share on valuation. I've heard advice before saying not to include valuation at all this early stage, and to have that be a discussion later. And I tend to lean towards that, but I'd love to hear your all opinions.
Yeah, I wouldn't put that in writing. That's a negotiable term, at least before you have a lead.
The challenge,
Here in Brazil,
unless somebody shows me the valuation, I don't know if I'm going to be able to help them raise funding, or if it meets my requirement, either personally or for my investors. And therefore, if it's out of line with everything else we're trying to do, it's just crazy for me to even consider engaging. So I need to see the valuation, and I need to see some sort of revenue projections, even if they are crystal ball gazing. It really doesn't matter. At least if somebody can justify those forecasts, and it always depends if there is at least some customer traction and masses of IP, particularly if there's a fantastic executive team and advisory board, then suddenly a 4 or 5 million valuation's fine. Could even be a 10 million valuation. And so I've raised 18 million valuation, but they had £1 million worth of revenue, and fantastic executive team, fantastic advisory board, and they had 5 patent families, half of which were granted, with the opportunity for many more, and great partners.
So Colin, do you not continue the conversation if someone says, if someone doesn't include evaluation?
I will insist before I go too far at having the valuation.
And what's everyone else's reaction to that? Do you agree or disagree?
I agree. I normally tend to see not only the evaluation, but also if the numbers match. It's what he was talking about. If the revenue is nil, right, a pre-revenue, and you come with a 10 million pound company and say, okay, do you have a patent? You have IP? What do you have? Because it's too much. Because we see so many companies, and you tend to compare them, right? So I can get a 10 million pound company with $1 million revenue, and it's completely different if it's new valuation, new revenue, right? So these comparisons we do all the time, but these numbers must be aligned to a certain extent. There's no rule, but it has to be kind of aligned to a certain extent. Maybe too much on one side or the other.
Maybe this is a stage issue, because I know Garrison and Colin are both very early stage and angel level, and I think George, Vera, and Jennifer and Carolina aren't. You're a little bit later. You are as well?
We do pre-seed, and I guess. And
do you agree or disagree?
I disagree in some way, because there's a different price placed on different experienced serial entrepreneurs, and also the market that they're going after and the type of product they're going after. So if one of our venture partners, for example, started 3 companies, sold 2, currently running it, like he can raise pretty much off an idea, a sort of very minimal product with a great team, and he can raise on like a 10 million plus valuation, just because he's bringing a lot of chops, and it's hyper competitive to get into that deal. So the valuation goes up as the competition goes in. But I think that's a big caveat, and I think for the majority,
I'd love like like I was saying, it's a combination of factors, right? As an
Yeah.
IP, the team, previous experience. You cannot just throw away 10 million pounds and not say anything.
Of course.
The whole thing has to match somehow. Revenue is a good thing. EBITDA, you don't need it in the beginning, but you need to have some revenue, some clients.
Yeah, exactly. But some entrepreneurs do make the mistake of saying the valuation too early in the journey when it is a discussion point. Like, just to give insight, after the call, our partners will be like, wow, they shouldn't have told us that.
I think, like, from my personal experience, I would not advise a startup definitely to put the valuation in the first pitch deck that it's sending to the investors. It should be brought from investor perspective at the first meeting, of course, because every investor wants to know that. And I see a pattern on the market because I used to work in a more early stage funds. Now I'm in a later stage. So in early stage, usually startups, this is the matter of negotiation at the end of the day, what valuation, because you don't have enough data to really value the startup. But in later stages, you usually have some either market benchmarks or you have some previous round valuations. So as an investor, you can, even without talking with a startup, but just looking at this data of previous round valuations, for example, you can estimate what would be the valuation and if it's enough for you. But from a startup perspective, I would definitely see it as a point to negotiate, not something that you offer to an investor, because you can always miss the sweet spot for your valuation. You can make it too low and it will be perfect for investor, but it might be not the best for you. So it's better to negotiate and to talk about it.
Yeah, I feel like what I'm hearing is that putting it can cause problems. If it's not there, people like Colin and Garrison will say, hey, what is it? And then you can bring it up anyway. But that it might cause issues if you're putting the wrong number there, or because you might look inappropriate for a specific fund, and it might harm you if it's there. That's kind of what I'm hearing. Is that wrong or right?
But there's one point that I would like to make, Andrew. If you are an experienced investor, you don't want to take too much equity, right? As well. So if the guy says it's too cheap, I don't want to take a bigger equity.
You're worried.
I will tell him that's too cheap, because that's gonna damage my next round. If only a junior investor would take 50% of equity or something like that big, right? So that gives also a picture to the entrepreneur that if he says a valuation and someone is not open enough to say, well, it's too cheap, that is not the right guy to handle, to be there, right? So you have to get this transparency as well.
Yeah, but I think it
has to be fair. Has to be fair.
Because sometimes when you have inexperienced founders, we as investors very often judge founders by the feedback.
Colin, we're getting some feedback. Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah. So as an investor, you very often judge a startup by the pitch deck that you see, and you can easily say if the founders are experienced in startups or not. So when you are a startup and you're not an experienced founder and you are giving a valuation and you have no idea how the companies at your stage are valued, you can easily put a valuation that will say an investor that you are not really experienced in that. So I think like you should really watch out when you are giving the valuation for the company.
Yeah. To what Gerson was saying, I think we had a case like that today where a person maybe gave away too much of their company too early, and I agree. You don't want that as an investor. You want them to feel an ownership over the company that they're building, and that you expect them to put their time and effort into. So yeah, I agree completely. A too low valuation, I don't want to. I want them to feel in charge. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. What are some other areas? So, valuations came up. Was there anything else that came up and stood out for you all?
I have one that. Yeah. So
Please.
mine is we love product focused founders that have like a deep relationship with their customers. Like they really understand what's going on with their product. And I think that's an area that the founders could have done more on today. It's like, so at least discussing what they've done to test some of the hypotheses around finding product market fit, and some of those metrics and what those tests are and what they've found out, so that we can get a strong sense that they're trying lots of different things. They're optimizing the product in innovative ways, and we're just seeing some development there.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think I would build on what it's quite an important point. I very often today had an impression that startups didn't give us the real USPs. They always give you this nice landscape, like this is the map and we are here always. But you never know, especially when you are a focused fund. You get like tens or even hundreds of business in the same area, and you always see the same landscape with the startup in the right top corner. So
I hate that landscape thing. I don't know if it's just me. I don't want to see it at all anymore.
Exactly.
I think it's a university thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being judgmental, but I just feel like it's a university thing. It's not real. It doesn't say anything.
Yeah,
Everyone puts themselves in a great light on it. Why are we even doing the thing? Why are we still doing that? I just don't get it. What information is it really giving? I don't know. Sorry,
real
Carolina.
When you Google how to prepare a pitch deck, usually what you find on competitors' analysis, this is this landscape. But from investor perspective, you really want to know quickly what is unique in this business. So I would rather advise startup to make one slide and put there our USPs and put the things that George mentioned. So things that you learned in your market research after talking with clients, and those niches that you found, those key things that are the most important for your customers that other companies don't have or didn't notice. So I think this would tell us as investors much more than this landscape with.
Colin was going to say something, and then I saw all three. We had George here.
I saw somebody else was speaking. There has just been produced a report on the most successful university spin-outs. And the ones that are being really successful with spin-outs do masses of market fit research, exactly what George is talking about. And it's a really insightful one where 80% of their are being successful because they do all this before they spin out the company. They've done all the market fit research and lined up potential customers.
Is that the Octopus report?
Yeah, it's an Octopus. Well, it came from, I saw that I don't think Octopus produced it, but I saw the link on an Octopus venture fund had published a link to the report. It's absolutely fantastic. And the most successful university of all places is based in Scotland, not in London. And the ones you would think, Oxford, Cambridge, are sort of middle ranking. Imperial's less than middle ranking. The ones ICES, Oxford, less than middle ranking. It was just a revelation to me. The university, I thought, they were really successful at spinning out companies that have been doing it for 20 plus years, and they really weren't anywhere near the upper quartile. Worth getting. If I'll dig out the report and I'll send it to you, Andrew, and you can circulate it to the group.
Yeah, I would love to get it. Thank you, Colin.
I think I've got it here. I'll put it in the chat. What was I going to say? Do you know what I felt? Just to echo your comments. I felt always that how we're actually going to win or how we're actually going to beat competitors wasn't strong enough. You could maybe see how they had included it in the deck if you kind of added a lot more, like, let's say, a lot more weight behind it. In reality, it was never convincing, and I felt that often that question was left unanswered. So how will you beat your competition? Like, how will you actually get customers to switch? How are you actually differentiated? And so perhaps that's leaning on actually just making it clearer, like, this is how we will win. Obviously, it would be great if there was data. This is why people are really switching. and the customer research piece comes in there. But maybe the piece of general feedback, in addition to customer centricity, is be much clearer about your differentiation points. Just a comment. I felt it was really relevant across all our decks. And is that the, Colin in the chat, is that the report that you're talking about? Octopus Ventures Entrepreneurial Impact Ranking?
Thank you.
Great, super. All right, guys, I think that's a wrap for me. So I'm going to head off.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. George and
thanks very much.
Bye, Jennifer.
Great to meet
you're
you.
amazing. Thank you.
Great to meet you all. Thanks so much. Chat to you soon. Hopefully see you next time.
George and Vera, did you want
Super.
to jump in with something? I saw you both pressing your unmute buttons.
I feel like it was basically covered by Colin and Jennifer in the a lot of people focus on their tech, right? They built it, they're very proud of it, but in the execution is where a lot of teams fail or falter, stumble. So a clear discussion on, well, you have these revenue targets, but how are you going to get there? Step me through what you're going to do and what are the challenges. And it's very difficult to do that in a 4-minute pitch. And I think a more general comment, even just from our feedback, is that everyone wants to hear something slightly different, and you're never going to be able to put everything that everyone wants to hear in a 4-minute pitch. It just doesn't work. And then similarly to how you can make your life easier by starting with a very narrow definition of a target customer, because then they're all very similar and your pitch is all the same. If you have a good understanding of who your potential investor is, you can really hone your pitch to exactly what they want to hear.
I didn't see a lot of customer discussions today. I didn't see a lot of, this is who we help. This is who has our problem. We know about this group. This is their issue. I didn't see a lot of that. I heard a lot more. This is what we do. This is the opportunity. This is the market. This is the size. I didn't hear a lot of we're customer pros. And I think that's what George was saying. Like,
and this is
like these deep dives.
And this is the misconception of, like, you know, you do a lot of research online, you see the perfect deck from Sequoia, and you get a lot of those templates from online, but really tying that story together and understanding that actually that's just the starting point. That's like, cover those bases, figure out your story, but then you need to go one level deeper, which is what unique insight do you actually have of your customer base. And then, like, some people say treat investors like kids, and yes, sometimes we need to be, because we're like either we're generalists and we don't understand the market, and we need to understand the value chain and everything else before we dive into the details, and that can be super helpful. But I do think, like, the point I'm trying to make here is show that you're a learning machine as an organization. And what that means is, like, we went to market with this, we learned this about our customers, this was our unit economics, we've improved these by X% by doing these tests, we're now optimizing on Facebook and Google over some of the other channels because of X. And it's like lots of insights about their journey to date. And that just gives you a sense of, like, oh, this team really gets it. They're driving momentum. We're ready to join them for the next phase, because we can trust them that they're going to build an incredible and enduring business.
Yeah, and that's what I love so much about the Vesta story, where that is all kind of there. Yeah, I completely agree.
That's great.
Maybe a more general comment on pitch decks, if we have the time. So I find the market slide, when it's top down, not super interesting. So this is all of the market.
I've heard that
and
before.
This is our slide.
Explain what that means.
And then
a
we
little
get, and then we 10%, and then that's where we're going to be in 5 years. This top-down view.
Can you explain why to start? Because I've seen that a lot in startups, and I don't think they understand what you're saying. Can you explain what you mean exactly?
Because looking at a top-down doesn't give me any. It doesn't convey the message that you understand how you're going to get there. It just means that you know what this number is, but this number has no connection with your business. So what I suggest people do instead is do it bottom up. So these are the numbers of customers that we can reach in 2 years. This is the revenue we can generate from every customer. And then you multiply that, and then you have your target market, which then at least gives me a bit of an understanding of
Right.
how much value has each customer, and then we can talk through, okay, but how are you going to get to these numbers, and how do you
Right.
justify charging for each transaction? And that to me just gives me such a high understanding of how they see their business and what they're trying to do.
And I think a bottom up
versus
from what George is talking about as well. So a bottom up from the I understand my customer. This is how I reach them.
Yeah.
This is how I convert them. This is the evidence I have that it works. And just for everyone in the chat who doesn't understand that the top down is the market's 5 billion for PCs. It's 1 billion. I don't. This is probably totally wrong numbers. It's 1
There's
billion
so much
for
segmentation.
UK, and we're going to get 10% of that within 5 years. So our company is worth 500 million, and within 3 years, and that's just starting at the top, and you're just taking pieces of that. Where Vera's talking about starting with these customers, how much does it cost to convert them? How are you growing them? When you expand that, what's your profit margins? How does all that work?
And the majority of investors are going to have you step through that anyways in conversation.
Yeah.
So this is a conversation that you cannot get around one way or another. Sorry, George, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, I was going to build on, you didn't cut me off, I was jumping in. Building on sort of market size and thinking about share of wallet. So I've seen this being discussed quite a bit recently. And, if you look at like the travel sector, and people talk about, oh, I'm going to go and disrupt sort of activities or some segment of the travel sector, but then like actually back that up with the empirical evidence around like, what does the average person spend on their trips? Actually, and I'm making this up now, so don't quote me, but like, let's say 60% of that is done on flights and accommodation. Therefore, like 40% of their spend is, understanding that share of spend in the market that they're in is super important. And I mean, we've seen this from like the challenger banks, where actually the interchange fees in Europe just suck. And so it's really difficult to make it work. Whereas, in the US, like you can drive incredible value just from the way the payments networks are set up and the interchange fees. And that's slightly different because that's more market dynamics, but I'm just making a few points around thinking differently about different businesses and different markets.
No, I think these are great. Of course, I could talk to you guys all night. I don't want to be a bad host, though. If anybody has any final thoughts they'd like to say, please feel free to jump in. What we're going to do is we're going to jump into networking. But if I just want to give the opportunity, if there's a couple judges that really wanted to say something, I will stay here with you while other people jump to networking. But you all are amazing, and like I knew already before I jumped in here, I knew that I could talk to you all forever. This is some great stuff. I can't hear you.
Or Colin talking. Oh yeah.
Thank you. Been a great evening. I'm going to
Thank you so much.
some wine and chill. So
It's great to have you. Yeah, I got my beer right here. I'm ready to do some networking and have a beer with folks.
thanks. Cheers. Bye now.
Yeah.
Thank you for organizing, Andrew.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me as well.
And thanks for giving so much of your time. I really appreciate it. I know now, 2.5 hours is not nothing, especially for investors. So thank you all for just being willing to give your time to give some, free advice to startups who are looking to grow and looking to make things happen. I'm sure they really appreciate it, and I really appreciate it.